morning, everybody. As previously stated, my name is Brendyn Pac, damage prevention supervisor with Eversource Gas, oversee the locators in the field and Markout gas lines. So I'm here today to talk about what the marks all mean on the ground, what that paint that you're seeing on the ground is after you've done your pre-marking, got your ticket, and you're good to go. So the standard code here, this is the existing color code for CBYD. Red for electric, cable is conduit, yellow for any kind of miscellaneous gas, orange for communications, cables, conduits, blue for water, green for sewer, purple for reclaimed water, pink for temporary mark, and white, as we just learned from our Slido that everybody did a great job on, is for pre-marking. So what do the marks mean? So you'll see those colors on the ground, and obviously there's going to be arrows indicating what all these facilities are in the area, but there are going to be specific descriptors. And these are important because this will identify what specifically you may be crossing in the work area that you have proposed that you'll be excavating in. So for gas specifically, the most common ones you'll see: cast iron, plastic, steel, direct buried, and insert. The rest of these are all important as well. I'm just speaking specifically to the gas ones that we see most commonly in the field. You will also see wrought iron, and there is still some wrought iron in the ground. I've seen a damaged 1-inch wrought iron facility that was over 100 years old in Waterbury. So we'll get to age of facilities a little bit later in the presentation, but what's important to note off of this slide is this is going to identify what you are looking for and maybe crossing in that area of your excavation. So what else do the marks mean? So you have your standard arrows there. They'll identify the size, the type, and that utility owner. So top left, you got your standard 6-inch plastic. In the center left there, T for a service going off the main to the house, where you see you also have your 6-inch plastic there. You have a 1-inch plastic service leading up to likely a residential house, maybe a business. The offsets, as Steve mentioned when you saw the pre-mark slide previously, where there were offset pre-marks, you can also see offset utility marks. Those are going to usually be used once that area is identified as somewhere that may be problematic for keeping marks up. Maybe gravel, dirt road, something like that. And those pre-marks are used to create an area that is going to definitively keep those marks better than where the excavation may be taking place. Stakes and flags, also acceptable for those kind of areas, or if you have a very wooded area, something like that. Foliage coverage on the ground in the fall specifically, maybe snow like we've just had. You could see stakes or flags out there. Stakes should be painted at the top with that facility's specific color code, like we talked about before. Should also have that utility's name indicated on the stake, as well as the size of the facility. And you could use those stakes for offsets as well. Those are generally the standard marks that you'll see, but we'll get into some more specific ones a little bit later in the slides here. So, again, what do the marks mean? In this slide here on the left, you see 6-inch plastic Eversource Gas. And you can clearly see the trench, a surface indicator that there is a facility there. We also have 6-inch water. Now, if you look at the descriptor used there, you can see 6-inch WM. This is not correct as far as marking out goes. It should not say WM. It should have a material type, not just say water main. Sometimes locators may put things on the ground that may end up looking confusing, not making any sense. So a big thing with that is communication with the utilities that you're working with on those tickets. Next, we also have here 8-inch plastic, or 8-inch PVC rather, sewer. And a 54-inch water main with a wide breadth of that markout that you can see on either side. So, like the earlier slide showed where we just have different runs of pipe, here you'll see 4-inch cast iron, 1-inch plastic insert. INS meaning inserted there. And like the offset mark that we discussed previously, you can see, like I kind of described before, bit of a wooded area, some gravel in that driveway right over here. So you may not have the best place to put down marks, assuming this homeowner is going in and out of that driveway. So that mark may be destroyed. So that's where you end up seeing offset marks like that, indicating that there is 4-inch plastic gas main in that tree belt there, 6 feet off. So special descriptors, like I mentioned with INS, that's inserted. You also have DB for direct buried, meaning that 1 inch, that 1¼ inch plastic service there is directly buried in the ground, not inserted into a previous service there. And 2-inch plastic with hand dig written under it. Now, if there is a gas mark, you have a tolerance zone and you should be hand digging around that gas line anyway, but that special descriptor may be used in specific circumstances where there may be an issue with signal, there may be an issue with records, so that may be the locator communicating to you specifically, there may be an issue here. We believe this is the location, but make sure you are hand digging. It's important to note also that it's not necessary to have hand dig written there, but like I said, that may be something that the locator is trying to use to communicate with you a bit more in the field. So what do these marks mean? Well, you have the 1-inch plastic insert into 2-inch steel service and the 6-inch plastic gas main. Why it's important to look at those specific descriptors, the DB for direct buried, INS for insert. It says 1-inch plastic, right? You may just be out there and say, okay, 1-inch plastic. That's what I'm going to be crossing. I'm going to see 1-inch plastic in the ground. When you go to excavate, you dig up, you see a 2-inch steel service. You go, okay, that's not going to be that 1-inch plastic. I don't have to worry about that. Keep excavating. Rip through that line, turns out that plastic is inside of that steel. So it's important to fully read and understand what those descriptors on the ground mean when you're crossing these kind of facilities. Even though that steel service that you're seeing there may look old and may seem like, okay, yeah, that's not the plastic, it's important that we identify what those are and treat those as live facilities. So as far as cable markings mean, you have single run of cable on the top left there, single cable offset on the bottom left. Again, using those offsets, not just specific to gas. Multiple cables, using those dual arrows, and then a multiple cable offset there. So here we got some examples of single cable markouts used for Eversource Electric and Frontier Communications. And on the right, you can see where there was in the previous slide, where there's going to be multiple cables in that location. So from the farthest left mark to the farthest right mark there's going to be a lot in the ground in that specific area. Duct banks, other things that are unique in their identifiers and marks. So you have duct bank offset, vaults, the end of main facility right there, and other utility features that extend to the surface, such as a drip. Some examples here of duct banks. You have the conduits in there. This isn't a buried treasure that you need to crack through the cement to get. There is actually going to be cable in there or electric in there. So another example of different kinds of markouts that you'll see, drip. So this isn't going to be a service, isn't going to be a main. It's going to look like a giant pot that's meant to collect condensation from that gas main. So different types of locating. The most common that we try to use is going to be direct connection or conductive or conduction locating. This is where we'll either hook up to, on plastic facilities, tracer wire in the ground, plastic wire that runs along that plastic service so we can locate it. On steel, you can direct connect to it, or use, like you see here on the left, a signal clamp that will put a signal directly around that pipe. Now it's important to know how those circles go around that pipe and how that signal is carried, because that will carry over into something that we're going to talk about in a little bit, bleed off. You also have inductive, which you see here, or as some folks will call it, drop in the box, where you'll take something that, like Mr. Eric Denslow has over there, an RD box, you'll drop it on top of that facility, and that signal will go around that pipe in the ground. You can also use additional things. We may end up using metal detectors to try to find paved over or buried valve boxes based on where records are putting them. And we also have a couple other tools that are relatively interesting as far as locating. A Jameson tool that'll go directly into the pipe, GPR like Mr. Denslow has over there. So there are a couple of different tools that we'll try to use if there's ever any sort of confusion or any sort of issue with identifying where something is. So, like I mentioned before, it was important to note kind of how that signal carried over that pipe, because this is how those things can end up going wrong. This is how mismarks can happen. So bleed off, let's say there's a 1¼ inch steel gas service, and let's say it was put in 70s, 80s, right, when they were putting a lot of stuff in the same trenches. Could have a steel water service, copper water service, what have you, in that same trench going right next to it. So if you end up dropping the box on that, or even direct connecting to it, there could be signal bleed off, where that receiver is going to pull you back and forth between those two, or just lead you directly to whichever pipe is going to be more conductive. How else can markouts go wrong? So the first two are things that we usually try to handle once they're immediately identified. A bad connection, we'll end up trying to reconcile that with records or other methods that we have of identifying where that facility is if we can't get a good signal off of it. Again, multiple different ways we can do that. Jameson tools previously mentioned, digging a test pit directly over it to help identify that location. We have the bleed off, like you just discussed, damaged tracer wire. This can happen for a magnitude of different reasons. Previous excavations, roots going through the ground. There was a different kind of old tracer wire that used to get used, red tracer wire that over time just disintegrates. So we'll try to replace those as soon as those are identified. And the biggest problem one that we have, which is inaccurate records. And the way I like to put this is, we're not only paying for the sins of the father, but the sins of the grandfather and the great-grandfather, because those records are only as good as the person who made them when they made them. So those are the big things of how that can go wrong and how we're trying to get around those. On top of old records, this is a little tough to read in the cursive, and I will let you read at will the right side of that slide. Rather good amount of expletives that I don't know if I can read because my boss is also in the room. So, Connecticut's an old state, right? A lot of the New England states, almost all of the New England states, they're old states. So this was actually a letter that was sent to the Hartford City Gaslight Company, which is now C&G. And if you're confused by who S.L. Clemens is, that is the pen name for Mark Twain. The gas company pissed off Mark Twain. So, like I mentioned, old records for facilities may use measurements and reference points that don't exist anymore. It's something that we have to deal with, that roads may be widened, there may be curbing added to it, measurements off of those things, hydrants may be moved, telephone poles may be moved. Depending on where those measurements were initially taken, those things can change dramatically over time, and those records may not always get updated. Some of that information may be scarce, and like I mentioned before, I've seen 100-year-old wrought iron facilities in this state, so they are out there. This isn't a one-off case with just individual, with just, here or there. There are, over 27,000 services that were installed in Connecticut before 1940. Before some of us were born, anyway. A lot of experience in the room. So, how can the markout process go wrong? Again, there may be unknown location, difficulty getting a signal on something, records may be wrong. One of the biggest and simplest things that you can do that is zero cost to you, communication. We live in the day and age of communication. Use a cell phone, call that utility. I tell everybody that I talk to on these call before you dig tickets, every contractor that I associate with, if you need anything in the state of Connecticut, if there's any confusion on marks, location, a facility that you've unearthed that doesn't really seem to make sense with what the markout is, just call. Just call. The utilities, I'm sure, are more than willing to work with you. I'm more than willing to work with you on anything gas related in Connecticut. If you need my cell phone number, please grab me on the side. I will be more than happy to get it to you. So if you see something like this where it is a question mark, that's probably a signal that you should call somebody. So if we can't locate an underground facility, we're pretty much required to give assistance. Like I mentioned before, we have a bunch of different ways that we can go and add additional locating methods to this. There are a ton of different tools that are in use now. We'll take the time. We'll do everything that we can to make sure that we're keeping you guys safe and marking as accurately as we possibly can. So as far as maintaining the marks, it is the contractor's responsibility. So once that call before you dig ticket is live, once you have all the responses, you've waited that 48 hours plus here, there, weekends, holidays, what have you, it is your responsibility to maintain those marks for the life of that ticket. There are many different ways that you can do this. A couple of them have been described here already. Taking photos is probably one of the easiest ones. Again, we all have a cell phone computer in our pocket now. just take a couple of photos, walk your whole job site. If you think that those are gonna end up getting destroyed or gonna have some issues with maintaining them, take photos of those. Make sure you're refreshing the marks with properly colored paint. If you have a gas service marked out, then you go and refresh it with blue, for example, from that previous color code. Somebody may identify that as water now. So make sure you're using the proper color paint with that previous color code to maintain those markings. Utilizing stakes and flags, like you said, in areas that may end up having some difficulty with maintaining marks, wooded areas, snowed areas. I know we just had the blizzard and then a thaw very, very fast, which also touches on maintaining those pre-marks as well. Offset marks, again, using the correct color code and covering existing marks with spoil piles. There have been numerous damages that we've been to that someone has said, yeah, I couldn't see the marks, there's no mark there. Well, you move the spoil pile and hit it with a broom and it turns out there it is. So when marks are faded or destroyed, again, call the utility that has marked that. We will work with you. You can see on the left, like I just mentioned, we had the big snow and then the big thaw. I'm sure there are a lot of marks out there that were marked appropriately on the left. We have that thaw and now there's some paint on the ground. That paint may have shifted. Maybe we had paint on a snowbank and then that snow all melts and now that paint's down a little bit, 18, 20 inches to the right or to the left. That would be a problem because that may change your tolerance zone and where you can excavate safely. Mr. Nivison, you want to take the slide out? Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Hey, Brendyn.